ever so much for being here. We are here today with Coach Amanda Lim. You'll actually never hear me call her Amanda. I always call her Coach or Coach Amanda. Today, she is here talking about her Lifting MAMAS program, which is a fitness and nutrition strategy for pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. If you've got any friends that you feel would benefit from this, then you can just tell them to hop on over to the Empowa website. They'll be able to download it from there. Quick introduction, very quick, because I don't want to take up Amanda's time. I'm Kathy. Most of you will probably know me because you have signed up for the Pregnant and Popped Baby Fair for Mums. That is part of what I do, but I also wanted to just ever so quickly drop it in and say that I help mums not only in this event space and bringing these partners together, but I am also a certified postpartum doula. That means that I come in and I support mums in that postpartum period with their families, with their babies, in their own space predominantly. I also help with transitions with feeding, be that lactation or formula, and then working on sleep rhythms, how you really get your days in sync with, the type of parent that you wanted to be, and then the transition going back to work. So that's just a super quick introduction as to what Empowa does as a whole when I'm not organizing Pregnant and Popped. And now all about Amanda. So today is all about her. So Coach Amanda, she has this program called Lifting MAMAS, and she is a certified fitness nutrition coach. Have I got that right, Amanda?
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. So she does the perinatal programs with personal training, and what I absolutely love is the online community. There's a lot of accountability in what Amanda does. She's your friend holding your hand along what she does. And I think that's what really, really makes her stand out, is she is incredibly talented, incredibly well trained, but also manages to translate that into our language and kind of hold our hands along the process. So I won't hold Amanda up any longer. I am going to hand over to Amanda.
All right. Thank you so much, Kathy. And hi, everybody. Thank you so much for spending your lunch hour with me. I know that Kathy gave me a beautiful intro and said, this is all about me, but gals, this is all about you today. And I really do mean it. I think that in postpartum and prenatal fitness, we oftentimes think so much about the baby. Is the baby safe? Is the baby going to come out well? But I think this session is really for you gals to focus in on what you can achieve as mamas during your pregnancy and what your best outcomes will be after pregnancy. And what I can offer you today in just this quick time is a little bit of information about what really matters along this prenatal and postpartum fitness and nutrition journey. How can you take all the information you see online, everything you see in the Instagram influencer world, everything you might even see on my Instagram, if you're following me, and kind of distill that into what matters most. And that's what I want to give you in this hour today. So thank you all for joining me. Again, a little bit about myself. So the person that you're seeing on the screen is a very not pregnant Coach Amanda Lim, whereas the very current Amanda Lim is 28 weeks pregnant with my third. So, please enjoy the image on your screen. But I am a perinatal corrective exercise specialist. And that's just a mouthful to say that I have been training prenatal and postpartum women since 2009, not only in the gym, but also in the kitchen, meaning I help you thrive in every way, from the fitness bit, the nutrition bit, to the mindset bit, because that's just as important as the first two. I do have a master's in dietetics as well as a master's in education. So you can see how I've joined those two things together as my life's passion. I programmed for over 150 pregnant and postpartum women, and again, including myself twice, soon to be third time. So I promise you that if you're going through a C-section, if you're going through a vaginal delivery, if you're going through, an older pregnancy, I gave birth for the first time when I was 38, and now I'll be 41. I just want you to know I am out here walking the steps with you. I'm in it every bit of the way with you as a coach. So when you join Lifting Mamas, you know that you've got someone that's really in your corner. Today's agenda, the main part of the agenda today is really going through kind of a myths and facts. I know that folks like to get this, especially when it comes to pregnancy, right? What is the straight talk? What is the science saying about this very special time in our lives? And how can we stay safe throughout our pregnancy while also preparing ourselves for the best possible outcome? So we're going to go through a little bit of myth busting and fact provision. After that, I'm going to give you a little bit more specifics into programming and preparation. So what I mean by that is how do you integrate specific exercises into your program to help you on the back end of pregnancy and postpartum? And how do you prepare for things like birth, things like the uncertain and the unknown, right? So I'll help you with a bit of that. We're going to go very, very surface level into nutrition today because nutrition, as you can imagine, is very specific to each pregnancy journey. So I'll just be giving you the broadest umbrella of what I can tell you about pregnancy nutrition. But of course, working with a postpartum and prenatal nutritionist is going to be one of the best ways to figure out your specific prescription. Moving on, I'll tell you a bit about my program, Coaching Wellness Solutions Through Lifting Mamas. And then at the end, do not worry, we will go through all your questions. And when I say AMA, when I say, hashtag ask me anything, I mean it, gals. So do not hold back. If anything I talk about today sparks a question in you that you have never asked anyone else, you can ask me. Okay. This is an absolute safe space for moms talking to moms. So please, please, please do not hold back in the chat for your questions throughout this presentation. So first of all, the biggest myth that I face every day in what I do: exercise during pregnancy is dangerous. It's unsafe. Don't pick up anything heavy. Don't run too fast. Don't do anything that might jeopardize your pelvic floor, your diastasis, your abdominal strength, anything like that. Let me break this down for you guys. Number one, exercise in pregnancy does not increase your risk of miscarriage, preterm birth, labor complications. It does not. So we know that authoritatively in both the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and the Royal College. So both the kind of UK and American authorities on this topic have joined together and issued a statement. This is not a thing. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is what exercise can do. So not only does it not have adverse outcomes, exercise can improve outcomes for you specific to gestational diabetes, which I will be talking about later because that is a very common issue here in Asia. Postpartum depression, so depressive outcomes can be moderated through exercise, and non-elective cesarean outcomes. So for moms that are looking for a vaginal birth, this is one way to kind of help yourself get a leg up on what is possible, is to stay strong and exercise. And finally, a point about the vigorousness or the intensity of your exercise. If you have been exercising before pregnancy, and I'm going to talk about this in just a moment, even vigorous exercise is safe in pregnancy. If you are someone who is already athletic, if you are someone who is already lifting weights, you can continue those activities safely. There is no such thing as a heart rate limit. We've already abolished that over almost 20 years ago. Almost 30 years ago, gals, we've abolished the BPM ceiling for pregnant exercise. And again, we know now through research that I'll show you in just a moment that strength training, resistance training, like the type that you see here, is not only safe, but beneficial for pregnancy outcomes. So the biggest myth buster there is, guys, exercise is awesome during pregnancy. And you can see me here feeling the awesomeness in my own studio. So if you're healthy, your pregnancy is normal, progressing along as it needs to, it is safe to continue your regular activities. It is also safe to start a new program. So I think the pregnancy myth of exercise being dangerous is starting to fade away. But what is happening in its place is but you can't start any exercise, right? So now women are being told, you can exercise if you're already fit, but if you're not, don't do anything. This is just as dangerous as telling women to not exercise at all or to stop exercising. You can start a safe, supervised progressive exercise program, even if it's not something you've ever done before. It's like saying I can't eat vegetables if I've never tried them before. I can't take steps if I've never taken a walk before. You can. And in fact, pregnancy is a great time to start establishing or firming up some of your healthier habits in fitness and nutrition. So I really highly recommend, even if you haven't started moving before, pregnancy is a great time to do it. You might just, not want to pick up the barbell quite yet. Pregnant women can get about 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity. And, the backbone of all pregnancy fitness programs, even the ones I write with resistance training, includes walking. So this is definitely a great way to start your program, is by getting 150 minutes per week of walking or similar. And as I mentioned down here in my quote box, staying strong during pregnancy isn't just a smart choice, it's a necessary one. Being strong is actually a tool that you can give yourself or be guided to be given with a coach that will help you carry comfortably and recover well after pregnancy. So again, gals, just remember that exercise not only is safe, it is wonderful during pregnancy. Let's move on to our next myth. Pregnant women. Now we've already established that we can exercise, right? But only yoga and walking. And how many of us have heard this, right? Like, oh yeah, exercise is great during pregnancy, but you can only walk, maybe swim, and do yoga. I will tell you a couple things. First of all, walking and yoga are amazing. So that is every week, in all of my pregnancies, I do prenatal yoga. Every week I get my 70,000 steps, right? 10,000 steps per day. So definitely you want to include yoga and walking in your prenatal fitness program. But they cannot be the only feature, okay? They don't do enough to strengthen the upper back and really work the core specifically to pregnancy in a way that's going to address the physiological stresses of our developing bodies, right? They also don't do a great deal of muscle building or muscle, lean muscle mass maintenance, which can actually lessen the incidence of the propensity for gestational diabetes and assist you in postpartum weight loss after the baby is here. So resistance exercise, gals, I'm talking about picking up some dumbbells and again, under the supervision of a coach or program, working in a progressive manner to support your pregnant body. The reality is this, right? This is growing, the back is going to be hurting, and the abs are going to be struggling to carry all this weight. The best thing you can do is actually build the strength to accommodate those changes through resistance training and strength training. So what's the evidence, right? So I'm telling you to do all this great weightlifting and training. This is me here. You guys see pumping some iron there on the left side. Well, first of all, we know that participants in studies who maintain their pre-pregnancy training levels actually report significantly less delivery and delivery-related complications than those who stop training before before giving birth. So I get asked this question a lot. Those of you who have seen me on Instagram or follow me there know that I'm really into CrossFit. It's something that I've done for many, many years. And I always get asked the question, well, when are you going to stop though? Like how far into your pregnancy do you go? And the answer is, I go to the end. I go until my body can no longer physiologically handle the type of exercise, which is rare because I know how to modify exercises to make it through the third trimester of pregnancy very helpfully. So the point is, if you're already training, you can use modifications and intensity modifications to make it all the way to delivery day safely. Also, you'll see my second point there. There's a significant positive correlation that women self-report between vigorous exercise or just regular activity and their own quality of life. And gals, we're talking about quality of life pregnant across the board. So we're talking about they sleep better. We're talking about energy levels being higher. We're talking about less incidence of swelling, edema, late pregnancy symptoms, back pain. All of these quality of life factors are actually higher reports in women who maintain higher energy expenditures. And that's kind of how they measured it in this particular study. You'll see my little image there. You might be thinking, okay, bouncy ball versus balloon. What's she getting at here? So think of it this way. If we're talking about stress on our body, which pregnancy is, gals, let's be real. Again, sitting here at week 28, there is a lot of stress on my body. There's a lot of weight. I would rather have a very, very tight and strong platform against which that stress can be applied. So if you think about, I have an exercise ball here, one of those stability balls or what we might call birthing balls. If you think about applying pressure to those balls, right? They absolutely adapt to that pressure, but they don't burst. Whereas you take that same amount of pressure and apply it to a thin little balloon, and that balloon is going to burst. The idea of giving yourself lean muscle and a little bit more strength density is going to make you like the exercise ball. You can take on the stresses of pregnancy and the external stressors of things like resistance training, and you won't burst. You'll simply adapt to that added strength and pressure rather than being the balloon. So again, when you're lifting those weights in the gym, I don't care what size they are, even if they're little weights, you want to think about making yourself as strong and resilient to the increased stresses of pregnancy rather than kind of collapsing under the pressure. So hopefully that visual pops into your head next time you're in the gym. Let's move along to our third myth. And again, you're going to have this very white belly in front of you, which is my own. Don't do abs during or just after pregnancy, right? Don't do abs, don't do core. Well, first of all, let's break down what that even means, gals. Your core muscles, right? The things that hold you up are not just your abs, but they're also your lower back and your glutes. And all of that comes together to actually support the most significant change of your pregnancy, which is the growth of your belly, right? So things like belly breathing, Things like specific forms of weight training. You'll see my gal here sitting on the balance ball, which is a great way to work your abs as well. And balance and stability work. These are all safe ways to do abs in pregnancy. Of course, at a certain point, you're not going to be doing crunches. Okay. Obviously, physiologically, that's not going to be possible after pretty early in pregnancy if you're me. But the point is that you don't have to give up core. And in fact, giving up core is one of the main reasons that I see women suffer in later pregnancy, meaning have more back pain, have more kind of edema, again, swelling of the lower limbs, because they do not have the deep core strength, what we're going to talk about in a second, the TVA, transverse abdominis strength, to hold the pressure of their growing body. So this is a myth. The don't do abs thing, definitely a myth. Let's chat about what you can do. Okay. Pregnancy and postpartum safe core activation is possible. And I've given you 3 examples here. The first of all is the TVA, right? Your deepest, think of like your corset muscles that kind of hold you up. Those muscles are the ones that you can master during this time with the simple act of belly breathing. If you are in my gym training with me postpartum or prenatal, either way, we're working on belly breathing. We're working on that deep activation of the TVA at the beginning of every single workout. The second thing you'll see here is actually focus on pelvic floor engagement. Now, this is something that I will mention in a few slides down. You definitely want to see a women's health physiotherapist for an assessment on your pelvic floor. But in general, you can activate and release. So you can, whether you have high tone, low tone pelvic floor, you can learn how to control your pelvic floor by doing certain exercises during pregnancy that you can then resume postpartum quite quickly. So the pelvic floor is another part of your core that you can exercise. Thirdly, your posture. And this, I think, is kind of the forgotten, almost like the redheaded stepchild of the core the core exercises, because everyone thinks about abs, right? Because we know about diastasis recti, which I'll talk about in a moment. Everyone knows about pelvic floor because we don't want to be peeing ourselves after we deliver. But posture is the one that I think falls to the wayside. And yet when we are in the throes of breastfeeding, if that's something that you embark on, that's where you're actually going to probably find the most acute pain and soreness on a day-to-day basis is actually in your upper back. So again, I've demonstrated here a cable face pull, which is one of my favorite exercises for the upper back. But just don't forget that all of these exercises, whether it's the deep core engagement of the TVA, whether it's glute bridges and the activation of the pelvic floor, or whether it's cable face pulls and the activation of your upper back and posture, these are movements that will take you from the first day of pregnancy to the last, and from as soon as you feel comfortable to exercise postpartum until you're fully recovered. These are the types of exercises that can be in your program throughout. And again, these are all kind of doing abs in their own way. Let's move on to our next myth, which is that you have to wait until 6 weeks postpartum to do anything. Okay, anything. So I know that there's this kind of magic aura around the 6-week clearance, but as you can see in my lower text here, being cleared for exercise is really a vague kind of term that doesn't have anything specific to do with a 6-week timeline. So it's not like you have a baby and 6 weeks later, boom, you're ready to exercise, or something magically transitions after 6 weeks that my switch flips and you're ready to exercise. In fact, there are so many variables that go into whether you are ready for exercise. And some of them I've listed here, right? First of all, what were you doing during pregnancy, right? So was your pregnancy health on point? Were you exercising? Or did you take a little bit of a break? Did you have an eventless, very, kind of peaceful delivery? Or were you someone who had some complications, perhaps an instrumental intervention that would leave you with a little bit longer recovery time? And of course, your individual preference. Do not, mamas, especially if you're first time mamas hearing this message, do not let anyone or any social media push you into starting exercise before you feel individually ready. Let us be real, right? After you give birth, not only do you have the physical recovery, whether that's a C-section scar or anything happening down below, but you also have a very mental and emotional recovery as well, depending on how your breastfeeding journey begins and progresses, depending on how much support you have at home, depending on what some of your cultural norms are around what you need to do immediately following your birth. Whether or not exercise gets onto the schedule within 6 weeks is deeply personal. So I want you to know that both sides are absolutely valid. Whether you feel that you're ready to take some gentle walks and do some pelvic tilts like I'm demonstrating here right after the baby, or whether you need a little bit longer to take an honest rest. Either one is okay. But just know that there's nothing magical about the 6 weeks timeline on either side. It doesn't make you instantly ready for exercise, and it absolutely is not a deadline to start exercising. It's simply kind of a medical convention that obstetricians use to make sure that they see you relatively recently after birth and can kind of get a sense of your general recovery. So here's the realness, gals. So, we're talking about this 6 week timeline. Let's talk a little bit about more what you might be looking for at 6 weeks that your obstetrician may not necessarily be checking for. And in a lot of cases, at least in the cases of my births, they have not. And there's three that I always look for. Number one is the one you guys have probably heard about, diastasis recti, abdominal separation, right? So as you can see here, where there's an actual separation in between your abdominal muscles that make it a little bit more difficult to manage abdominal pressure, and in some cases provides more pressure down to the pelvic floor, which can result in incontinence, skin laxity, all sorts of things. Secondly is kyphosis, right? So you can see kind of that upper back rounding. And again, this happens in both breastfeeding moms and pumping moms. So no one providing nutrition from their breast is going to be, exempt from kyphosis. It's something that tends to happen with a repeated incidence of rounded shoulder position. And then third is pelvic floor insufficiency. And again, this is related to things like incontinence, urgency, unable to hold bowels, stuff like that. You definitely want to be aware of each of these, but mamas, don't worry. This is not saying this will happen to you. These are not expected outcomes of pregnancy. These are possible outcomes of pregnancy, but there's something to be aware of. And absolutely, whether you've been cleared at 6 weeks for exercise by an obstetrician or not, you should see a women's health physiotherapist. And if you're joining us here in the Pregnant and Pop community and you're in the Pregnant and Pop village, there are several women's health physiotherapists on the ready to help assess you for each of these conditions and make sure that you are truly ready for exercise. So I always say, as I mentioned in the previous slide, there's emotional readiness, there's mental readiness, and there's physical readiness. And when all three of those components come together, that is when you really have the chance, mamas, to thrive in a meaningful way after your baby is here. So just make sure that you take all the steps necessary to be truly ready for exercise, whether that's 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 days. Now, in terms of muscle, right? How do we move safely in pregnancy? How do we get started after pregnancy? And what really matters here, right? So I mentioned earlier kind of the types of exercise that matter. You want to make sure you're addressing your TVA. You want to make sure your pelvic floor is strong and also able to relax. And you also want to make sure that your posture is in check. But I always say, hire a coach and use a program. And that is not simply because I am a coach and I have a program. I would love to have you. But I would love for you to work with any coach in any program that's certified in this area. The reason being, sometimes one of the biggest barriers to starting an exercise program after your baby is here is just not knowing what to do, where to start, what's safe. So if you have a coach in this area that can actually walk you through the steps that are individual to how you delivered, what your pregnancy was like, and what your ability levels are, that's going to be your absolute gold standard for postpartum fitness. I also say that you should always start as you mean to go on. So if you want to be a fit mom, you want to be playing with your kids out there on the playground and hoisting them up on the monkey bars. I've got a 3 and 2-year-old, right? So these are the things that are relevant to my experience, right? Then you want to start now to make sure that you have the strength and stamina to do those things when your kids are a bit older. Always go slow. Focus on the shoulds rather than the cans. And this is for the mamas that are like myself, right? Lifelong athletes, killing it in the gym, get pregnant and go, whoo, that's a slow down. Gotta put the brakes on a bit. It's all about what you should be doing versus in this period versus just what you can. Okay, you might be able to do 100 burpees. You might be able to climb the rope. You might be able to jump over a log. But are these the things you should be doing? Are these going to give you outcomes post-pregnancy that are useful to you? And if the answer is no, and the three things I just mentioned probably are a hard no, they're not going to give you any very useful outcomes for postpartum fitness, then I would say scale it back a bit. Don't be afraid to focus on what you should be doing during this time, which is again, strengthening your core, making sure your pelvic floor is intact and working on your posture versus just what you can do, or again, what looks cool on Instagram, right? So go slowly. And for mamas that tend to overdo it, my type A athlete mamas like myself, take it slower than you even think that you need to, right? You will never ever regret taking a step back during pregnancy when that will allow you to take a step forward postpartum. Finally, focus on function rather than aesthetics. So make sure that you're thinking about how your body works and functions rather than just how it looks. And gals, this is relevant to both the prenatal and postpartum periods, but probably a bit more on postpartum because there is such a pressure in our society. And again, specifically in Asia, I will say to lose your weight quickly, right? There's a course pressure to gain as little as possible during pregnancy, which is a competition, gals, you don't need to join. But there's also that pressure to lose it all on the back end within weeks, days, a month, whatever it may be. If I can just give you a little piece of advice, and again, this is coming from someone who has gained some pretty significant weight and lost it, focus on what your body's doing well and what it's doing functionally rather than just how it looks. Sure, you can burn a bunch of calories by heading to an HIIT class, 4 weeks after you give birth, but is that really going to help your pelvic floor function in the long run? You can go way under calories and drop weight as quickly as you want, but is that going to affect your milk supply? You definitely want to think about the positive functioning of your prenatal and postpartum body as the number one priority over anything aesthetic. And I know that that's a mindset shift for a lot of us, especially women. I mean, obviously, we're all women, but especially for women who have been told their whole lives that how your body looks is its value. Let me tell you, gals, in pregnancy and postpartum, how your body works is its value. And you want the best functioning, most, efficient body during and after pregnancy that you can possibly build. So do think about that function a little bit more than you think about aesthetics during this time. Now, we're going to have a short chat about nutrition. And I've mentioned before that, these are very, very general guidelines because in order to give you specific counseling, number one, I would love for you to work with my partner who is a medical doctor here at Lift Clinic. And of course, you would want to also have the advice of your obstetrician at every step of your nutrition program. So just making sure that you understand that there's medical nutrition therapy that is separate from what I'm giving you here. But hey, here's some good advice for all of us going through the pregnancy process. And some of this is actually great for those that are just trying to conceive, if I have any TTC mamas on the call today. So first of all, we all know about folate, right? Previously, folic acid. Now we know that methylated folate is actually the most absorbable and bioavailable form of folic acid. Again, folic acid being synthetic, right? So folate is the actual naturally occurring compound. Methylated folate. And by the way, if you guys have your prenatal vitamins at home, you might want to take a spin on the label here and have a look. If you have methylfolate, or also known as metfolate in some proprietary blends, 800 micrograms is the recommended dosing. Some doctors will tell you to go higher. If you're a high risk mom, some doctors may put you all the way up to 4,000 micrograms. So I'm just disclosing, I'm considered high risk because I'm old. Okay. So I'm on 4,000 micrograms. At least I was for the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. So now I've down dosed. But the point is, your doctor might suggest a different dosing, but every doctor is going to recommend a methylated folate supplement. And that applies to the 3 to 6 months prior to conception, as well as the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. This is the most crucial time to have this specific type of folate in your prenatal and in your diet. Hey, get your dark leafy greens, get your folate all day, gals. Second is iron. Now, if you're someone who's iron deficient naturally, meaning when you are not pregnant, girls, it might be time to check your iron in pregnancy, because one of the adaptations that our body makes in pregnancy is to increase our blood volume, meaning we got a lot more blood. Well, gals, if we have more blood, but we're already low on iron, putting more blood will only dilute that iron even further. So even if you haven't been iron deficient previously, you may be now. And particularly in the third trimester, when obviously birth and delivery do come with a significant blood loss, you might want to make sure that your iron levels are optimized going into your birth. So make sure, and again, most of your doctors are going to be checking this, but make sure that your iron levels are checked. Make sure that you are getting really great dietary iron, with vitamin C if you're choosing plant-based forms of iron, and make sure that you are topped up prior to going into the delivery room. Gals, I can assure you that it will help you on the back end. Choline, so this is a lesser known nutrient, but we now are getting a lot more science around why this specific micronutrient is so important, can actually help with your baby's intellectual development. So there are studies coming out that your offspring's cognition and neurodevelopment are improved by you taking choline during pregnancy. Again, this is a great time to grab your prenatal vitamins, spin it around, see if you got choline in there. 900 milligrams is the current recommendation. To give you an idea of how to get this from food, each egg has about 150 milligrams of choline. So you could have a good amount of eggs, or you could take it supplementation and then top up with food-based sources as well. So folate, iron, choline, and the last micronutrient that I'm going to say is wonderful for all mamas is DHA. And I mentioned here, high IQ babies come from fish eating moms. There's increasing science that shows us that moms who have a greater proportion of cold water fish in their diet actually have offspring that report higher IQs. And this is IQ testing not only at kindergarten age, so about age 5, but that those effects actually persist to age 10 and 15. So DHA, why not do it? If you're a fish lover already and you don't have any mercury sensitivities, then you would want to make sure that you're getting your cold water fish from fish. You can also take a DHA supplement, and again, just make sure that you are checking the mercury levels on the fish that you choose to make sure that you're getting safe amounts of safe amounts of mercury alongside your DHA. Collagen peptides. Now, this is one that I'm bringing. I'm going to take off my kind of strictly nutritionist hat, and I'm going to put on my "I'm a woman just like you" hat, which is skin laxity. Okay, is a definite issue after giving birth, at least for me and for a lot of older moms, because of the stretching of the skin in certain areas. You might notice a laxity or a lack of quality in the skin after birth, especially if you're a petite woman who's grown quite a bit with your baby. So collagen peptides are completely safe and recommended to take during pregnancy and after to help you with a little bit of that skin elasticity and quality. This is one of the great things about living in Asia, is that we have access to all sorts of collagen containing foods. So bone broth, chicken feet, things that have kind of the naturally occurring collagens already in them. Beauty in the pot, I'm gonna give you guys a shout out for your collagen soup. This is a place where you can really start integrating more collagen rich foods quite easily into your diet. So you may not even need to supplement if you're a fan of those foods already. I want to talk about two kind of broader strategies outside of the specific nutrients that I just talked about, and that is gestational diabetes strategy and protein. So these are kind of two sides of the same coin. Those of you who have had your diabetes test already, and usually that's administered around week 28 of pregnancy, and had a positive result, so meaning that you have been tested for gestational diabetes and you have it, not to freak out. Okay, this happens all the time. It is a temporary form of diabetes, so nothing to really freak out about. But some of the ways that you can manage diabetes are actually through nutrition and exercise. I hope your doctor has told you this if you're one of these moms. First of all, you want to make sure that you're taking down the amount of processed sugar in the diet. So, things like sugary beverages, things like processed food that have a high sugar density. I mentioned here too much fruit. So there is such a thing as too much fruit when you're a gestational diabetic. You really want to even fructose, naturally occurring fruit sugars, you want to take down. And what I call lonely carbs. So if you are someone who is modifying your diet for gestational diabetes, you don't want to take a meal that's just carbs. So for example, just a juice, even a cold pressed, lovely organic juice, even that. You don't want to have carbs on their own without a fat or protein to slow the insulin release relative to that carb intake. So for moms that are diagnosed with gestational diabetes, like I said, my messaging here is, first of all is not lost. Don't worry, you didn't do anything wrong, but you can take some steps to improve. And secondly, is just to make sure that you're being mindful not only of your processed sugars, but your fruit-based sugars, and then your overall carbohydrate intake, making sure that you're pairing your carbohydrates, and again, your healthier carbs, with some fats and proteins to slow the insulin spike there. Secondly, protein. So optimizing protein during pregnancy is crucial to all of that other stuff I talked about in the first part of this presentation, like building lean muscle and staying strong. You need to make sure that you're eating enough protein to optimize that. And gals, studies are telling us now that only about 12% of moms, and this is 12% of moms in the second and third trimester, where this is the most important, are getting the minimum amount of protein, which is 1 gram per kg of body weight per day. Okay, so I am cool with sharing my weight with y'all just to give this a great example. So I'm about 72 kgs right now. So 72 grams of protein would be my bare minimum for pregnancy. Now, as a mom who's lifting weights and really high energy expenditure, I aim to get double that, 2 grams per kg of body weight per day. So we're talking about 144 grams of high quality lean protein per day. And this is the recommendation that I would make for active moms. So if you gals are not as familiar with what foods contain protein or how to get more protein into your diet, this would be a great time to consult a nutritionist to make sure that you're maximizing the most valuable macronutrient for this stage of pregnancy. So as I mentioned before, and you can probably tell from my, passionate way of speaking, this is what I do on a day-to-day basis. My full-time job is fitness and nutrition coaching. It's not a side gig. It's not something I picked up on the wayside. It's something I've been doing for 17 years, and I've been working in the prenatal postpartum space since 2009. I can help you find the balance that you're looking for in terms of staying fit, but also managing weight gain, but also managing diabetes, and also trying to be my strongest self on the back end, but also trying to breastfeed well and have milk supply. It can be really stressful and demanding. And having a coach in this space that helps you navigate the multiple demands of these really pressing times can give you a leg up. My Lifting Mamas program is designed for exactly this. And just to be clear, gals, this is something that I administer personally. This is not something where you sign up and then a team of coaches, or even worse, an AI bot just kind of, follows up with you. I actually personally coach each and every one of my clients. And that's why my clients get great results. So if you are looking for someone to help you with all of these kind of pieces of the puzzle that are a bit more specific and a bit more difficult during pregnancy, I'm here for y'all. A couple of testimonials here from my satisfied clients, but just to give you a really brief overview before we get to all your questions, because I'm sure there are a few after giving you so much information in a short time. I just want to be clear that with my program, it's executed entirely online, but with personal access to me. So I offer not only exercise and nutrition programming in the form of meal plans, meal tracking, exercise, customized workouts and coaching, but I also do coaching calls just like this, where we can chat to one another about what's going on in your everyday life and kind of how to manage the day-to-day challenges of being a new mom, or hey, even a second or third time mom, right? Every pregnancy is different. So I do hope that you'll have a quick look around my website after this presentation. What you'll see here in the final slide is 2 links. One is to my website to learn more about the programming. One is to my Instagram, where I am constantly updating with daily tips on how to stay well, not only for pregnant and postpartum moms, this is for women of all ages. So you can go ahead and take a look at those 2 resources. But I would love to spend the last few minutes in this conversation talking to you gals. What's on your mind? What questions do you have? So I'm going to go ahead and open the chat. Yeah, so you gals can go ahead and drop those questions in the chat. And Kathy, I'm not sure if there were any questions while I was having a long-winded conversation here with myself. But please, please, please feel free to drop those questions here in the box.
I think we've all been listening to you and just blown away with some of the facts and the newness of some of the information that we're getting, because it, like you say, different parts of the world, different ways that the medical professionals think. I think it's really, really refreshing to be told that we can be in control of our bodies, really.
We can.
Yeah.
And we're the best at it, by the way. So win-win for us.
Totally. We do have a question. If you got your chat box
I do. I can actually see it
cool.
now.
Go for it. Okay.
Yeah, check me out getting into 2023 here. So the question in the box, right, is regarding customized workouts. Like, do I stay online watching you do them, or making sure that you do them right? This is a great question. So the way that the programming works is actually twofold. So you have the option to either get the exercises with videos of so I'll demonstrate the exercise for you, but you perform it in real time on your own. Or you can come into my studio if you're Singapore based and work with myself and my trainer team in terms of actually doing the workouts on your own. I don't do an option where virtually I watch you do the workout. So for example, where it would be like this, where I could see you on video. I don't offer that option right now, simply because I don't have the capacity to have 150 clients doing that type of thing. But I guarantee you that I have never had a client that's been injured or had any sort of outcomes related to not being seen. So, my workouts are extremely safe and easy to understand by watching the videos as described. So I hope that answers your question. I also want to just comment something on something that Kathy had just said, which is the importance of kind of having a medical professional that understands your specific needs and body type and desires and abilities at this time. Part of the reason that I do what I do is because I'm one half of what's called the Lift Clinic, which is a clinic that my husband, who is a physician, and myself work at jointly, whereby my clients that do need a bit more medical advice and medical nutrition therapy can also see the doc, right? Can also see someone who can medically prescribe them things like iron infusions, medical grade vitamin D, stuff like that. So at my workplace, we actually offer medical support for things that you might need. So you're never kind of, left with that one of my least favorite sentences in all of medicine, which is ask your physician. So ask who and what do I ask them, right? This is where my husband and I work together as a great team to make sure that you get the support that you need, not only in accountability, but also in medical advice. I see a great question here, a very specific question about having a 4cm diastasis and an umbilical hernia that you just realized. I feel you, girl. It happens. And after your second baby, and I don't plan for more. Would I be able to support workouts for closing this gap and living with the hernia until I am old? First of all, welcome. Welcome to this world of kind of trying to be active, but also dealing with some of the wonderful leftovers of pregnancy. So first things first, I would ask this particular person, have you seen a women's health physio for this? So 4cm is quite big, even at 7 months, that's quite a significant gap. So first thing I would say is, have you seen a physio to kind of assess the severity? Something that we're learning now about diastasis recti is that it's not only about the width of the gap, but about the depth of the gap. So how kind of far can you get into that separation? And also, what's the functionality of that gap? So for example, does your gap make it difficult for you to manage downward pressure when you're doing something like a weighted squat? So, is the load something that is problematic for you because of your diastasis? These are questions that you would want to answer with your physio, and then you would want to answer for yourself, because a lot of times we have to be real with the hernia as well. Is this something that's more aesthetically bothersome to me, or something that's more functionally bothersome to me? And it's okay if it's aesthetically bothersome and that you want to do something about it. But if there isn't a functionality problem, you may not need to address it so go after it so hard. So what I would say is, see your physio first, assess whether you have a functional problem or an aesthetic problem, assess whether this is something that has improved since giving birth rather than, gotten worse through activity. And then I would say it's a great time to start with a coach to make sure that you have a program that progresses you through the proper training modulations to get you to a more functional place. I have a second question here, which is, any tips on balancing coming back to running as a breastfeeding mom and making sure that I eat and drink enough to maintain supply? Would it be realistic to consider training for a half marathon? My baby is 13 weeks. So this is a great example of, you know yourself best and you know what you're doing during pregnancy. So if you are a mom who is able to run during pregnancy and maintain any sort of consistent weekly mileage, then I would say absolutely, a half marathon is not out of consideration. I would say that if you were a beginner, so if you were a beginner marathoner, I would give you a 20-week training plan. So as a new mom, I would give you a 20-week lead in for any sort of competitive running event that you were looking to do. And again, and I know this is, the refrain that you're going to hear from me over and over again, I would see my women's health physiotherapist first to make sure that there were no incontinence issues related to impact running, and there were no issues related to posture that were undiagnosed, so that you could make sure that your running training was doing what it was supposed to, which is to help you run, right? Rather than just kind of working around problems that you already have. But that being said, making sure you eat and drink enough is a massive concern when you are undertaking something like distance running. So this would be a perfect opportunity to work with a nutritionist to give you an exact number of calories that you would need to intake as you progress through your training program. And again, you heard me, 20 weeks of training, ideal for a postpartum mom. That's a great question. Cool.
I can see, I can't fathom doing a marathon.
Yeah. And again, if you have never run, again, this may not be the ideal time, but if you're a mom who has run pre-pregnancy and even run a bit during your pregnancy, it's not crazy to say that a half marathon could be in the cards 20 weeks from now. That would be, again, my ideal timeline.
Yeah.
I realize
and like you say, the how active someone has been beforehand versus what's the norm for them, and then what's the norm for me are, you know, two entirely different things.
Yes. Yeah. And again, what might be a half marathon for this mom might be a mile run for another mom, right? And that would be, you know, an equal amount of training and progression depending on what your starting point was.
Yeah.
I realized I missed a question here, and I'm so sorry about that. The person who asked, my top 3 essential core workouts for a postpartum mama who's already fit. Okay. So I mentioned the belly breathing, and I know it's like, you know, almost like the most boring of the core exercises because it is just breathing. But take this tip that women who are competing in bodybuilding do a version of belly breathing, which is called vacuum breathing, to get their abs for bodybuilding competitions. So to give you an idea of how essential and important belly breathing is, it actually has made it to the bodybuilding sphere as like, and again, they rebranded it as vacuum breathing to get their core in shape for competition. So belly breathing, not to be overlooked, and it is not a joke. So that's my number 1 thing. My number 2 is heel slides. So lying on your back, and again, this is all detailed in my app. So lying on your back and sliding one leg forward at a time and making sure that you can control the individual as well as the 2-legged progression. That's my number 2 for, and again, I'm just like an immediate postpartum mom who's already fit. And then number 3 would absolutely be glute bridges. And I love glute bridges because you can progress them to whatever level you're at. So if you're, you know, a mom who's brand new to fitness, just your basic glute bridge, pelvic tilt, which I had shown in this presentation, which you'll all be getting. That would be my step 1. If you're a mom who's already fit, you can start adding bands. So you can do some banded abduction work with your glute bridge. And if you're a mom who's super fit, has been weight training the whole time, you can actually add a dumbbell to that glute bridge. And that's going to give you a little bit more intensity training that's still appropriate for your stage of postpartum. So those would be my top 3: belly breathing, heel slides, and glute bridges. Great question. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, great. You're welcome. The person, I'm hoping I answered your question well. You're so welcome. But yeah, any other questions, gals? These are wonderful questions, what you're all asking. And I can tell that you're all kind of differently engaged in this fitness and nutrition world. And it's great to see.
I actually had a very interesting client I was meeting this morning who is really excited to get back to some of her strength training. So she's just had a baby last week. And second time baby. She is 37 years old.
Okay.
So she's just kind of at that, yep, definitely feeling different this time around, you know, in terms of recovery and how she's feeling about getting back to things. But she is adamant. She was working on, or continued to work on her strength training while she was pregnant. And she says it really, really helped her. Kind of, she feels that when she got through to the pushing stage, especially, she felt like she had the core strength and the core stamina to kind of, you know, maintain what she needed to do, you know, in a short space of time. She really felt like she was able to nail it because she had that core strength.
I love to hear that feedback, Kathy, because I could present studies and studies and research as much as I want to, right? But it has nothing on the actual experience of seeing the difference, right? So this woman who was able to strength train during her pregnancy and then have a really positive birth outcome because of her strength and stamina. I mean, that's worth more than all the studies in the world. I love to hear that. Thank you. Thank you. I did get one more quick question here about being 33 weeks and getting back pain spasms at the end of the day, even though she really wants to maintain. Oh, girl. Okay. So a couple of things here. And I should have mentioned not only women's health physiotherapists, but some of the other health professionals that can really help an active woman in pregnancy. And one of those is a chiropractor. So there are chiropractors that are specific to pregnancy and prenatal that can help release women who are prone to spasms. Now, that's not to say that you don't need to do your core work, right? So you've got to get your core in order if you want to give your lower back the best chance of carrying all this. But for women who have recurrent spasms, even though they are staying active and working their core, sometimes having a manual release done by a chiropractor or an osteopath is one of the best things you can do, especially, like I said, if it's becoming more and more recurrent later in pregnancy. So I would definitely recommend having a quick check through with your chiro or your osteo in this specific area and seeing if some of their manipulations can actually help release the spasm, because that is so uncomfortable and really, you know, dissuades you from doing further activity. So I hope you can find relief quite soon. I saw a quick question here about, can I do pull downs as shown in the picture while sitting? Doctor asked me to limit my time on my feet. Wonderful question. So one of my favorite pregnancy modifications for weightlifting is sit the F down. Okay. It's like if you are spending so much time on your feet that you're getting swollen ankles, you're having pain in your ankles, you're having pain in your knees, you can absolutely sit down to do your exercises. And this ranges from everything. I mean, obviously you can't sit down and squat because you're already, in a seated position, but anything you can do with your upper back. We talked about face pulls. You're asking about pull downs. I'm talking about shoulder presses. I'm talking about anything with your upper body and even your belly breathing. You can do it seated. So that's a great question. And that's a great way to kind of continue your fitness program, even when the going gets tough in that third trimester. So yes, have a seat, keep on working, girl. You can do it. You can do it.
I think I might need to start at the sitting and then
Yeah. And progress to the standing.
and the other way around.
Yeah. Well, I always, when I'm at CrossFit these days, I'm always like, oh yeah, I've only got this load on my back, but don't worry, I've got this load on my front. So I'm lifting more than all y'all. So don't worry.
Absolutely.
It's already hard work, just being me. No. All right. Any final questions, guys? We just got a few minutes left here, and I want to make sure these are wonderful questions, and I hope that I'm giving you the helpful answers that you need. I saw some typing there. No, okay. Maybe not.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, I thought I saw some typing in there. Are there any form of exercise that will worsen diastasis, or what will happen if we do nothing about it? These are wonderful questions. So if you do absolutely nothing about your diastasis and it's not very severe, then you may need to do nothing. So my point is, if you're functional, if you have a functional separation where it's not affecting your pelvic floor function and it's not affecting your day-to-day activities, you don't necessarily need to do anything about it. Now, this being said, you are going to see moms that are postpartum that are using some sort of support. So one of our amazing pregnant and pop partners, Health to Mama, they posted a video yesterday you might want to check out about abdominal taping, which is using kinesiology tape to actually kind of secure the abdominals in early postpartum while doing exercise or really just while doing day-to-day activity. That is an awesome option to help kind of manage your DR symptoms in the beginning. You can also, if you're someone who does heavier weightlifting, you can also consider wearing a weightlifting belt, and that's going to help take some of the pressure off of your midsection in early to recent postpartum. Exercises that can worsen DR are specifically those that add abdominal pressure that you can't manage. And that's different for everyone. So for example, someone like myself, right? If I was to put a really heavy load on my back and take a really deep squat, that level of pressure I can't maintain right now because of my stage in pregnancy and because of the natural separation of your abs. By the way, we all have diastasis in pregnancy. So here we all are with our abs out separated. So that level of load, I couldn't bear at this point because one of the techniques that I use when I'm not pregnant is called the Valsalva maneuver, which is a deep breathing technique that manages pressure. When I'm in pregnancy, I don't have access to that technique. So I wouldn't be able to do that exercise. That's one example that's specific to me. For a mom who has, a different separation from what I have or has a different level of fitness, something as simple as a crunch could actually provide the pressure. Something, in fact, as simple as getting out of bed. So a lot of my moms with DR, they always say they notice it when they come up from a chair, or come up from a bench or come up from a lying position, that they see a coning or a doming happen here. That's your first sign that there's some undistributed pressure that may be problematic. So it's not so much a specific exercise, it's movements that actually provide pressure that you can't handle. And that's different for everybody. So coning and doming is something to look out for as a sign of undistributed pressure. And obviously peeing as well. So if something makes you pee, that's undistributed. Make sure that you get it checked out. Cool. All right. Awesome. I'm glad that answered your question. And I think, Kathy, we probably are at the end here where we might need to wrap up.
Absolutely. We are. You've done incredible. And it's been so lovely that everyone has been kind of engaged and really got something out of it. And we know it's a lunch and learn. So we know everyone's kind of probably got to get back to their jobs. So Amanda, we can see you face to face on Saturday. Yes.
Yes. So please. So for all of you guys, if you were on the call today, first of all, I'll be sending out a very special discount code for my program if that's something that you're interested in joining. And if you are coming to the Pregnant and Pop Fair on Saturday, come by, tell me you were on the call. I have some free swag for those who are on the call today. So I would love for you to come by and get some Lifting Mamas swag from me.
Okay, so we need to come up and say like, "Hey, we heard you," and
Yeah.
That's cool. We can do that. We should have like a special code or something.
Give me the keyword and I'll know it was you. But yeah, just say you're on the call, and I will be happy to give you that free swag when you guys come by on Saturday.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I hope everyone has found this really useful, and I've enjoyed working with Amanda now for multiple fairs. So this is super exciting to get this. I am so excited to see everyone on Saturday. I'll be running around in a bright yellow t-shirt. I think Amanda will be running around in her lifting MAMAS stuff. So
yeah, it'll be exercise gear for sure. Like, this is as fancy as I've gotten for some time.
So come and see us. And yeah, we look forward to meeting you all. We are professionals in our own right, but we're not medical professionals, okay? So first and foremost, please do refer to your doctors if you've got any concerns. Our main goal is really to provide you with a supportive and informative community. If you are concerned about your own health or your baby's health or anyone else in your family that you're using this information to help, then please do run things by your healthcare provider first and foremost.